Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. This time, we're going to be diving into the world of Chinese e-commerce and how it's reaching out across the globe. And we've got a really interesting source material for this one, right,
We
Mike?
do. We have an audio file that's all in Mandarin.
Oh, yeah.
So
Straight from the source.
we're going right to the heart of it. But don't worry if you don't speak Mandarin, we'll break it all down. I mean, you're here to learn about the big trends, the major players, and most importantly, maybe
Right.
the opportunities that are opening up as Chinese businesses start to, look beyond their borders.
Exactly. And we're going to give you all that. So let's start with just the big picture. Global e-commerce is just exploding right now.
Oh, yeah.
We're looking at projections of over $6 trillion by 2024.
That's wild.
It's huge. And in this massive landscape, China is a dominant force. I mean, they are leading in market size and how much e-commerce is just woven into daily life there. Okay, so what is it about the Chinese market that makes it so uniquely positioned to really expand globally? Is it just a numbers game, or is there more to it?
It's way more than just the numbers.
Yeah.
Think about it. The Chinese population has basically skipped over that whole brick and mortar, traditional retail evolution, and they just went all in on e-commerce.
Really?
Yeah. And so this digital fluency gives Chinese companies a big edge, right? Plus, their digital infrastructure in China is incredibly robust. I mean, their mobile payment systems, their logistics networks, it's top-notch.
Wow.
All of which lets businesses scale up really quickly.
So it's not just the market size, it's the whole
It's the ecosystem.
ecosystem that's been built around digital transactions.
Yeah.
But they're not just keeping this to themselves, right?
No, definitely not. And this is where it gets really interesting. We're seeing, this incredible growth potential in developing countries, a lot of which have these strong ties to China already.
Right.
Places like Southeast Asia, Latin America.
So they're going into these new frontiers with almost like a built-in head start
Yeah, exactly.
because of those relationships they already have.
Exactly. And just to really drive home how dynamic this landscape is, think about the merger of Shopee and Lazada.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, each of those were already major e-commerce players, especially in Southeast Asia. And now, together they've created this regional powerhouse.
Well,
And that kind of consolidation really says a lot about how fast things are growing and the fierce competition in these emerging markets.
yeah, for sure. Now, speaking of key players, our source material actually highlights Lianlian Global. They're a Chinese payment solutions provider, and they're helping businesses navigate, this whole complex world of international expansion.
Yeah, Lianlian Global is a fascinating example of how Chinese companies are actually facilitating global commerce. And one thing that really sets them apart is this huge network of payment licenses they have. They cover, over 100 countries and can support transactions in 130 different currencies.
Wow, that's incredible reach.
It is. And for businesses that want to go global, that kind of reach is priceless.
Right.
It streamlines transactions, it minimizes all the headaches that usually come with international payments, and it really just opens up a world of possibilities.
Now, there was one detail in the audio that really, really caught my attention. Lianlian can process international money transfers almost instantly. That typical processing time is, 3 days or something?
Yeah, how about that?
Near instantaneous transfers just seems like a total game changer.
Oh, it's huge. Think about what that means, for a small business owner. Maybe they're selling, handcrafted goods all over the world.
Yeah.
With Lianlian, they can get paid immediately and then take that money and put it right back into their business.
Oh, that's smart.
Whether that's, new inventory, marketing campaigns, or even expanding their operations. That kind of speed and agility can be a massive competitive advantage.
Yeah. So it's about more than just convenience, right? It's giving these businesses the flexibility to really
The financial flexibility
Yeah.
to jump on opportunities when they come up.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's crucial in e-commerce,
Oh, for sure.
where, trends can shift so quickly.
All right, so how is Lianlian approaching this global e-commerce landscape strategically? It sounds like they've got a lot to offer.
They do. They've got this kind of two-pronged approach. So
Yeah.
first, they're actively helping Chinese businesses sell their products globally. They're providing the tools and the infrastructure to reach those new customers worldwide. And then second, they're helping these businesses actually set up a local presence in those target markets. So it goes beyond just, online sales to a deeper level of engagement and growth.
So it's not just helping with like the transactional side of things, right? It's helping them actually set up shop in these new places.
Exactly. You
Oh,
got it.
wow.
It's not just transactions, it's a whole ecosystem of support for businesses that are venturing outside of China.
That's really impressive. Now let's get a little more specific. Our source material mentions three key regions that Lianlian's focusing on: Southeast Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East.
Right. And each of these regions has, unique opportunities and challenges. So, for example, Southeast Asia is projected to hit like $161 billion in e-commerce revenue by 2024.
Wow.
It's huge. And what's really fascinating about Southeast Asia is the dominance of mobile-first platforms like, Shopee, Lazada, and TikTok Shop.
Right.
They've really mastered the art of like mobile shopping. They integrate elements of social commerce and gamification, things that really engage users, especially, younger demographics.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, there are some valuable lessons there for businesses everywhere, actually.
Yeah. No, we already talked about that Shopee and Lazada merger, which, is a pretty clear sign of just how competitive the Southeast Asian market is. It seems like consolidation is a big trend in these, rapidly growing regions.
It is. The drive to achieve scale is definitely real. Another thing that's interesting about Southeast Asia is the influence that Chinese companies already have there, especially when it comes to, shaping e-commerce practices and infrastructure. So they're not just entering the market, they're actually helping to build it.
So it sounds like a very dynamic and potentially like very lucrative market for Chinese businesses that are looking to expand. What about Latin America? How does that compare?
Latin America, it's a different kind of landscape. It's a region that's been on the radar of global e-commerce players for a while now. You've got, established platforms like Mercado Libre that have a really strong foothold there.
So it's a more mature market than Southeast Asia. Does that make it tougher for new companies to break in?
In some ways, yeah, it can. But what's interesting is you're seeing the emergence of Chinese companies like AliExpress and Shopee, and they're making some serious inroads, challenging those established players. And we're seeing, a growing presence of Chinese businesses in key markets like Brazil and Mexico. And here's a smart strategy.
Yeah.
A lot of them are using these locations as kind of springboards to reach the even bigger market in North America.
Oh, that's clever. So using their foothold in Latin America to get access to a much larger market.
Exactly.
It sounds like Chinese companies are playing a long game here,
They are. They're thinking strategically about global expansion.
Yeah.
Not just chasing those quick wins. They're positioning themselves for real sustained growth. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about the Middle East. It's a region that often gets overlooked, but it has enormous potential.
Yeah, I'm curious. What's the e-commerce scene like in the Middle East?
It's booming. The market there is growing incredibly fast. Projections put it at, somewhere around $150 billion by 2024. And while platforms like Amazon and Noon.com are definitely major players, we're seeing this surge of Chinese companies coming in.
Really? So, what's driving this influx of Chinese businesses into the Middle East? Is it just the market growth, or are there other factors at play?
It's a combination of things. The Middle East has a young and tech-savvy population.
Yeah.
And there's this growing appetite for online shopping. And on top of that, governments in the region are really pushing digital transformation and e-commerce initiatives.
So you've got strong consumer demand and a supportive environment from a regulatory standpoint. That sounds like a recipe for success.
It is. And that's what's making it so attractive to Chinese companies that are looking to diversify their global footprint.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And our source material actually mentions that a lot of Chinese businesses are already setting up shop in the Middle East, building local teams, adapting their products and services to really align with regional preferences.
So they're really committed to making their mark in this market.
They are. It's not just, dipping their toes in the water. They're all in.
Yeah.
And you can see that commitment in the investments they're making. They're putting resources into logistics, marketing, customer service, all tailored to the specific needs of Middle Eastern consumers.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach?
Not at all.
Now let's circle back to Lianlian Global for a second. Let's
Yeah.
dive a little deeper into how they're actually supporting this global expansion.
Yeah.
We talked about the broader trends, the regional dynamics, but I want to understand like the nuts and bolts of Lianlian's role in all of this.
Sure, sure. So one of the biggest challenges that businesses face when they expand internationally is navigating all the complexities of payments
God.
and financial transactions across borders.
Yeah.
And this is where Lian Global really shines.
Okay.
They've built this really robust platform
Yeah.
that streamlines these cross-border payments, and it makes it so much easier for businesses to get paid by customers around the world.
So they're like a bridge between these businesses and their global customer base.
Exactly. Simplifying what can be a really complicated process.
Yeah.
They're simplifying those cross-border transactions,
Yeah.
reducing processing times, minimizing fees, which is absolutely crucial in the fast-paced world of e-commerce.
Right, right. Now, what about regulatory compliance? I imagine that's a nightmare for businesses that are trying to deal with, different rules and regulations in every country they operate in.
Yeah, it's a huge headache. And it's another area where Lianlian really excels. They have this deep understanding of global financial regulations. And they make sure that all the transactions that go through their platform comply with all the relevant laws and requirements.
So that takes a lot of pressure off of the businesses themselves.
Oh yeah, it's a huge burden lifted. It lets them really focus on what they do best, their core operations.
So they're not just a payment processor, they're like a compliance partner as well.
Exactly.
That's really valuable. Now, our source material mentions that Lianlian has these two core approaches to supporting businesses that are expanding globally. Can you talk a little bit more about those?
Yeah, so the first one is called global selling, and it focuses on empowering Chinese businesses to sell their products to customers all over the world. So they offer, tools and services that help with cross-border listings, marketing, logistics, customer support. It's essentially like a one-stop shop for businesses that are ready to go global.
That sounds like a pretty comprehensive suite of services. And what's the second approach?
So the second one is called global localization.
Yeah.
And this goes beyond just, online sales. It focuses on helping businesses establish a real physical presence in those target markets.
Oh, so it's like actually setting up shop in these countries, going beyond just selling things online.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So this involves, registering a local entity, opening bank accounts, setting up local warehousing and fulfillment operations, hiring local staff. And Lianlian, they support businesses through this whole process, leveraging their expertise and their network to make that transition as smooth as possible.
It sounds like they're really going above and beyond to help these Chinese businesses succeed on a global stage.
Yeah.
It's not just about, facilitating transactions.
Yeah.
It's about providing this holistic support for their growth.
You bet.
That's really impressive.
And that's what really sets them apart in this market. They're not just a payment processor or logistics provider. They're a true partner for businesses that are looking to expand internationally.
Now, our source material, it dives into some of the specific services and features that Lianlian offers. Are there any that stand out to you as particularly, noteworthy or innovative?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most impressive features, and we touched on this a bit earlier, is their ability to process these international money transfers in almost real time. It's a game changer for businesses. It gives them much faster access to their funds, and it really improves their cash flow.
Yeah, I imagine that's a huge advantage in a market that's so competitive.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Another notable feature is their global KYC service. KYC stands for Know Your Customer. And it's a crucial part of regulatory compliance in the financial industry.
Right. It's about verifying the identity of customers to prevent things like fraud and money laundering.
Exactly.
But how does Lianlian approach this in a global context where the regulations can vary so widely?
Yeah, that's the tricky part, right? So Lianlian's global KYC service, it streamlines this process. It makes it easier for businesses to onboard customers from all over the world while still making sure that they're meeting all those necessary compliance requirements. So they've found this balance between compliance and a smooth and efficient user experience, which is really important in today's fast-paced digital world.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds incredibly helpful for businesses that are dealing with a global customer base.
Yeah.
It removes a major hurdle, and it lets them really focus on growth.
Yeah, for sure.
And it highlights Lianlian's commitment to providing this safe and secure platform for global commerce. It's not just about, facilitating those transactions. It's about building trust and transparency within the whole ecosystem.
Exactly.
Now, our source material also highlights some of Lianlian's, key achievements and milestones. Are there any that you think are particularly significant for our listeners to understand?
Yeah, one of the most notable milestones is Lianlian's successful listing on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange.
Okay.
This is a huge accomplishment, and it demonstrates not only their financial strength, but also their commitment to transparency and good corporate governance.
So it's a signal to the market that they're a serious player, right?
Yes.
With a long-term vision.
Exactly. Another significant achievement is their impressive growth in terms of transaction volume, and just the sheer number of businesses that they serve. They've processed trillions of dollars in transactions.
Wow.
And they've helped millions of businesses expand globally.
Those are some incredible numbers.
They are, and it really speaks to the trust and confidence that businesses have placed in Lianlian's platform and in their services. They've really established themselves as a leader in the global e-commerce landscape.
As we wrap up our deep dive into Lianlian Global, I'm curious to get your thoughts on the bigger picture. What are the implications of all these trends for the future of global e-commerce? We talked about Lianlian's role, but how do you see the landscape evolving more broadly?
I think it feels like we're seeing a real shift happening in global commerce.
Yeah.
The rise of e-commerce plus the growing influence of Chinese companies.
Yeah.
It's creating this landscape that's much more interconnected.
Yeah.
And a lot more competitive. Businesses from all over the world, they can tap into these global markets now.
Yeah.
And consumers have access to a much wider range of products and services than ever before.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
And what's really fascinating to me is these trends are moving beyond the digital world and starting to have an impact in the physical world, too.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we're seeing these Chinese businesses actually establishing a real tangible presence in these new markets, setting up operations, creating jobs, contributing to economic growth, all on a global scale.
It's like this ripple effect.
Yeah.
Starting online and then expanding outward, connecting businesses and consumers in ways that we couldn't have even imagined a few years ago.
It really is. And all of this interconnectedness, it creates a ton of opportunities for businesses and consumers.
Okay, so how so?
Well, businesses can, diversify their markets, tap into new customer bases, and potentially unlock all these new avenues for growth. And for consumers, it means more choices, more competitive pricing, and access to products and services that they might not have been able to get locally.
So it's kind of a win-win situation. But are there any downsides to all of this? To this increased interconnectedness? Like, could there be unintended consequences for local businesses? Or even, cultural diversity?
That's a great question. And while there are definitely a lot of benefits, it's really important to be mindful of those potential challenges.
Yeah.
One concern is that smaller local businesses might have a hard time competing with these larger global players. The ones that have access to more resources and can really benefit from economies of scale.
Right.
There's also the risk of, what we call cultural homogenization, where the unique characteristics of local markets start to get overshadowed by these dominant global trends.
So finding that balance between globalization and preserving local identity, that's going to be key moving forward.
It really is.
It sounds like this whole evolution in global commerce, it requires businesses to be a lot more agile, adaptable, and innovative to really thrive in this environment.
Absolutely. Companies need to be really strategic in how they approach global expansion. They need to understand the nuances of different markets and adapt their products and services accordingly. And that's where, companies like Lianlian Global are so important. They provide the tools, the infrastructure, the expertise to help businesses navigate this complex and ever-changing landscape.
This has been a really insightful conversation. We've covered a lot of ground, from the big macro trends shaping global e-commerce to the very specific ways that Lianlian Global is empowering businesses to really take advantage of this dynamic landscape. Before we wrap up, I'd love to hear from you, our listener. What are your key takeaways from this deep dive? What really resonated with you?
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? We started with understanding just how massive global e-commerce is, and we saw how Chinese companies are really reshaping things. With Lianlian Global leading the charge, they're helping businesses navigate this exciting new world.
Yeah, it's amazing to see. And for you, our listener, the key takeaway here is the world of global e-commerce isn't some far-off concept anymore. It's here. It's happening now. And Chinese companies, with their innovative solutions and their strategic vision, they're playing a huge part in making it all possible.
And what's particularly interesting is these trends aren't just limited to the online world. They're having a real-world impact. We're seeing Chinese businesses establish themselves in new markets, setting up
Yes.
operations, creating jobs, and boosting economic growth.
It's a perfect example of how the digital and physical worlds are blending together, and Lianlian is right at the center of it all. Their role in making these cross-border transactions
Mm.
seamless and helping businesses expand globally. It's truly remarkable.
As we move forward, it'll be fascinating to see how all of these trends continue to evolve
Yeah.
and how they shape the future of commerce. I think we can expect to see even more interconnectedness, even more innovative business models.
Yeah.
And the lines between the digital and physical worlds will just continue to blur.
Hmm. Now, before we go, I want to leave you, our listener, with a thought-provoking question. How might these trends, the rise of Chinese e-commerce, the globalization of business, and the innovations that companies like Lianlian Global are driving, how might all of this impact your part of the world? What opportunities might emerge for businesses in your region? How might consumer behavior change because of these trends?
It's a question worth thinking about because these trends aren't just limited to China or any one specific region. They're global, and their impact will be felt everywhere. So as you go about your day, keep an eye out for signs of these trends in your own community. You might be surprised by how the world of global e-commerce is already shaping things around you.
Right. That's it for our deep dive into the world of Chinese e-commerce and its global ambitions. We hope you found this journey insightful and maybe even a little bit thought-provoking. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into this fascinating world around us of